That lends a lot of credibility. If you come in and can be upfront and honest and say, actually in this application, I think this product over here that I don't represent would be better for you. That all of a sudden now you become a trusted advisor rather than a salesman.
And I often say that we have all the requirements of space, right? Because it has to go underground and send us data from miles and miles away, and it has to work. Like, failure is not an option.
We'll put on, a standard mule shoe. Ours is slightly different just for that, but it's, everybody's got one.
The top drive and the drawworks really don't care whether the electrons coming at it are from a joystick or a PLC.
The panel, what you see here on the left, which is now controlled by one of my students, is showing you actually the control of our brakes.
As of now, geothermal is a pretty small market.
If you have tortuosity, the casing will be up against the side on part of the well. There won't be any cement there. The cement will have crescent around it.
So managed pressure drilling, it's been defined as a process to precisely control the pressure profile in the wellbore.
The key is being transparent with our clients in this case. So tell them what happened. If we had a failure, tell them exactly what happened. Whether it's our fault, whether it's whatever the issue was, we need to be transparent.
I think it's very important for everyone in the industry to know what's out there and kind of what's happening downhole as well.
I've probably worked on over 40 different performance limiters in my career. If I miss any of those, and the computer is raising weight on bit, and I miss any of those, I have a train wreck. The computer's going in the ocean.
Here's your new colors, here's your new ththing. We don't do that at all.
Here's the tattoo you need to get.
Yeah, here's the tattoo. Sorry about the last one. We used to fake that all the time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is the Vidor Lucksmith Show, where we are unlocking the secrets to success in the oil and gas industry. One interview, one technical presentation, which is what we've got today, and one technical screw up at a time. We had our handful last week. Clinton Moss, thank you so much for having been on the show last week, talking about magnetic ranging, entrepreneurship, and amongst many other things. And then sticking around with me, we probably talked for another 2 hours after that. It was an absolutely amazing show. If you guys have not seen it, you can go and check that one out. It's easiest to be able to watch the old episodes on YouTube. So for anybody that's looking for the prior episodes, be sure to go and check that out. That's where they're at. We've got an absolutely amazing show this week. Sorry, I'm a bit under the weather just a little bit this week. So I'm going to try my best not to be coughing and hacking on the show. So I probably won't be doing as much talking as I normally do. So for everybody out there that's watching, please do all the typical social media things that social media people ask you to do: like, share, subscribe. The biggest things for this show, at least, just tag somebody in the comments who you think would gain interest from what we're talking about today. They can either join in and watch with us in real time, or be able to come back and watch this later. A lot of the content that we are going to be bringing to you on the show now and in the future is essentially just evergreen content. This is stuff that you are going to be able to educate yourself on now, and to be able to have this as an educational tool to be able to look back on later on. Also, let us know where you're watching from. More than happy to be able to give everybody a shout out. I'm back in the studio, so my ability to be able to control this, comments and everything is going to be way easier than what it has been in the past. So like I said, let us know where you guys are watching from. Really do appreciate that. Trying to think of any other updates that I've got. I don't have any. I'm bringing on the guest here in just a second. So let's say Jason says he's watching from Bolivia. LinkedIn user, the always infamous John DeWart, watching in from Colorado. Thank you for being here, sir. We do appreciate it. LinkedIn user from Houston. Don't know which one this is, but thank you for being here. We do appreciate it. Leroy, as always, tuning in. Good morning. Tuning in from Mumbai. All right. And then Hamas tuning in from Dubai. Oh, almost knocked my entire glasses off my head. There we go. Lawrence tuning in from Alberta. Thank you for being here. I'm not going to butcher your name, but he's watching in from Lithuania. He's like Brian tuning in from Bow Bridge, and Ahmed tuning in from Manitoba, Winnipeg. All right. thank you guys for all being here. Like, seriously, this means so much to me. Like, it could just be 10 of us here, or it could just be 3. Like, it really doesn't matter to me. Do the show because I really love it. I love being able to help out the industry. Darren, tune in from Magnolia, Texas. So for today's guest, Lars Oy, which means island, as I just learned, was going to be here helping us out. If you have not seen this, there is a clip from Well ID where they showed their 40 caliper. It's on LinkedIn. I think it got over like 1,000 likes or something. Obviously, some very interesting stuff that's happening in our industry. But before we do that, I want to do something special. I want to be able to give away a drill bit. Now we got everybody watching. I want to give away a drill bit. So what you need to do is in the comment section, just type in, and we're getting more people watching. Another one from Mumbai, India, and from Austria. So Rakesh, and who was also from Mumbai? Oh, Leroy. Maybe they're in the same office. I don't know. Maybe they know each other. Maybe they don't. Maybe they get to meet and network. That's one of the great things. So we're going to give away a drill bit. To get the drill bit, what I need you to do is in the comment section, type in #Corva. Show today is brought to you by Corva. So in the comment section, type #Corva, and you can get yourself a drill bit, right? Get yourself a drill bit. So while you're typing that in, we've got an amazing video from Corva who's teaching us even more about different ways to be able to use the digital data that they acquire, all right, and have insights too. So this is this week's Corva Insight. While you're watching, #Corva to get yourself a drill bit. All right, here we go.
Another real challenge the industry is facing, especially with increasing legacy mature fields, saltwater disposal wells, and increasing reservoir pore pressure from all this disposal, is the risk of getting differentially stuck. So there's a typical workflow on kind of monitoring this is very manual and kind of old school, looking at your parameters, and even then doing a proper analysis. Most of the time it's after a post-mortem event, after you've got stuck, had a jar on it, worked string-free, risk damaging things. So there really needs to be a better way of checking this every single connection, maintaining your optimal parameters going back to bottom, and watching everything else that you need to be doing.
Excellent. And that was this week's Corva Insight. All right. So if you haven't done it yet, you need to put in #Corva. And right after we do this little giveaway, because you get the drill bit, it says Gibson Reports on it. And maybe one day I'll get the other name and stuff put on there. But, you know, I can only get so much done in 1 week, you guys. All right. So let me bring this up. Add to stream. All right. So we've gotten 8 so far. Come on. You guys can do. There's more than 8 people watching. But, hey. I know that for those 8, they're probably saying, no, nobody else needs to do it. All right. And if we hit double digits, I'll give it like a 5-second count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we'll do the drawing. Now, all right. So just 9. All right. We'll see who it is. Oh, nothing against LinkedIn user, but I think we've got 2 of them watching today. And so we'll see who ends up getting it this week. Rakesh. All right. So we're sending one of these to Mumbai. All right. Thank you, Rakesh. That was brought to you by Corva. All right. Thanks for doing that. All right. How do I turn that back off? Remove. All right, Rakesh. Send me a DM with your address, and then we'll get everything sent over to you. All right. On with the show. Thank you all so much for being here. I need to stop doing such long intros, but hey, this is how it works. So, Lars, thank you, and welcome to the show, sir.
Yeah, thanks for being here. It's impressive to follow how we are bringing MWD into the social media. So that's just amazing. And,
well, I think there's plenty out there for everybody to be able to learn from. So, you know, it's great that what you guys are doing to be able to educate the industry on what's actually taking place downhole.
Absolutely. It's downhole Googles we are sending down. So we appreciate your feedback.
Well, like I said, I appreciate what you guys are doing. The more understanding and visibility of what we have that's taking place downhole, I think it helps educate all of us. And so this show being what it is, I want it to be an educational tool out there for everybody. So I'll go ahead and bring up your presentation so you can jump into it, Lars. And thank you so much for being here to be able to educate us today. There we go.
Yeah. So I'm from WellID. It's a company started 6 years ago, and we are working with LWD sensors. And the idea behind WellID started in 2016. I was working with rig technology, and I thought, what's missing in the LWD market? I'd been doing LWD and directional drilling back in the past, and what I always thought was missing was calipers. There were so many simulating a borehole, and they were discussing and thinking and using the gut feeling, but hardly anybody measured it. And especially for big boreholes, there was nothing at all that actually worked. And then intuitive visualization of logs. There were scribbly lines, and people were complaining constantly about the logs. They were hard to read, hard to understand, and again, people were rather using their gut feeling instead of trusting the sensors. So what I always heard was that was just big companies that could do something like that, to develop a new sensor, to do something new. And I thought, I think they're wrong. Let's just start WellID and beat the big companies in new technology. So that was back in 2016. And started with looking back what had happened the last 20 years in LWD, and then see that the tool architecture of most tool strings has been more or less the same since 2000. And they have a low sample rate. People are using their gut feeling instead of sensors. And the sensors are expensive, customized, the storage capacity is low, and it's the best of the 70s. And when you look at the rest of the world, then maybe it was necessary in the 90s to design customized sensors, but today there's so many other industries. This was the phone back then in early 2000. Now you got sensors. There's so many sensors in a phone, and cameras and IR and everything. So why can't you just utilize these opportunities? And that was the approach we had, that we wanted to. This was back how it was done in 2000, and now everybody uses the GPS and the cars starts driving by themselves. And then you have the drone industry, you have the aviation, you have space, you have medical, car. They all acquire sensors that are accurate, reliable, can handle harsh environment, low cost. So there's no need for the downhole industry to customize, to develop themselves. And that was the approach we had for thinking it's possible to do something new. And then how to make LWD caliper and how to make a new visualization. We combined, that's what we're doing. We combined lots of things that we could find. That was the first approach, and then cooperate, find people we could make a win-win with, and then we had to develop the rest. And so far that's been a successful approach. If you had tried to beat Schlumberger with 100,000 people, we would never succeed. We had to rely on finding off-the-shelf solution and cooperate, be flexible, be agile. So when started WellID, it was a joint industry project. We got ConocoPhillips and Equinor supporting us, both financially and technically. And we also got some research funding from the Norwegian Research Council. And the support from the oil companies also proven that they thought our value proposition and the need for caliper was real, because lots of startups that develop something that industry actually don't need. And I think that was very important to see that they saw the same value proposition as we. For the caliper, that's a radar-based LWD caliper. It's for 12.25 to 17.5-inch boreholes. It has its own battery and memory, so it can be put in any BHA. And sample rate is 100 to 200 samples per second. And so you get easily into gigabyte memory instead of a kilobyte. That was used to be the standard. And it was always an aim to make it easy to operate. So this extreme complex tool that you need long manuals and in-depth understanding to operate. I think that's history. One very important aspect for us was to make it low risk to pilot, because if it had been high risk to take the first run, no one would dare to send it downhole, and we would just end up with having a tool on the shelf. I found a video back from 2016, and that was before we had any downhole electronics. We had a sensor, a radar sensor, and we made a mock-up of a LWD tool, and we put that in a casing with mud and hooked it up and got measurements. And of course, there was a big discussion if we could fit a laptop down this LWD tool, but we just used Gaffa and put it on top of it. So the principles were the same as today's tool, but the wrapping was very different. So here see some of the development phases that we have been through. Started with the first proof of concept was a little more sophisticated, put in a clean workshop, and then we got attention, we got support for further development, and then it was into making LWD tool and running it on a test rig onshore and with very gentle conditions. And then the final was then sending it in a real well, challenging well with high pressure, high vibrations. And that was then the last development phase that we had on the hardware. So just shoot in if you have any questions. I'm always interested in discussing these things. So this is measurements from 12¼ inch section. And it was very surprising to see all the spirals here. It was anticipated that there could be spirals, and I've heard about it in the past, but then seeing it, measuring it, and see different sections had different spiral, that was just an eye-opener. In this case, it was drilled with a RSS tool, and we saw in the tangent section when they were building, when they were building angled, there were different pattern than in the tangent. So we see how different tools, different bit behaves. We can nail down the commands they send to the RSS and see how that creates a response. So it's very interesting to see the downhole picture. The spirals we see here, there's one that is 95 centimeter long. So sorry, I've been a little out of empirical units now, but around 3 feet. And you can see that as a small edge here, and that relates to the bit to first stabilization point on the RSS. And then you have a longer spiral around the 7 to 9 meters here. And I think that can be related to the cruise control or hold function on the RSS, but that's still to be
Lars, how far is it from peak to peak on those on that? What was the distance?
Yeah, on the peak to peak we have a 1/4 inch. So it's on the small ones. So it's not a big spiral here. It's a small spiral, but this adds friction over time. So it adds a lot when you have 1,000 of feeds. Then what is the consequence of this? You can run liner through here, but as you get deeper and deeper, it will increase friction, and then you'll stop ultimately. So when we see all this pattern, we wonder how far could you have gone if the bore had been straight. And we also see there's so many simulating on this that don't take the geometry into account. They probably add a friction factor and they fudge that to fit the torque and drag. But I think it's wrong approach. I think the right approach would be to have the geometry into the calculations. And then friction factor reflecting the friction between the formation and steel not compensating for geometry. And this is a 3D view that we have made. And this is an odd one. You can see it as a video.
This full screen.
Yeah. So if you scroll fast, you see the spiral going there in a circle. And then you see the smaller ledges. We have added in, this is work in progress in the visualization. I'm constantly doing updates to it, but we have, for example, put in a small scale here, so you can, this is your point of view, and then you have 1 meter, 2 meter into it, so you can correlate the spirals. So here you see this slightly less than 1 meter between the peaks here. And we have added in some comments, being inspired by GPS in a car. When you have if you have turn approaching or a roundabout something, you get a warning before, like you get a warning that there is a ledge coming. So the thought is then that these are some severe washout and ledges. And the idea then is to use this, for example, for drillers when they're running liners and casing, that they can have a roadmap and then be prepared before they get into issues. And it's yeah.
We do have a couple of questions coming in, and a lot of, so I know that you may not be able to answer this, but we're going to put it out there anyways.
Absolutely.
We're acknowledging some of the questions, right? Because obviously technology development means that you have to be under NDAs and stuff like that. So Brian says power drive, just that. That's all he said. Johnny says, is this spiral from a power drive, right? And then somebody was saying about, putting the scale on. There's scales on there now. Is it a push the bit or point the bit RSS?
It's push the bit.
This is a push the bit. All right, There we go.
But I think you should be a little careful with drawing conclusion there, because we have seen spirals from point the bit as well. It might be that it's more prone with spirals with one system over the other, but we have seen spirals with both.
Okay, here's an excellent question from Brian, and this might be jumping ahead. Obviously, we've got a lot to cover, and I think this is absolutely fascinating. I love watching this. This is some great stuff. Brian says, how long to dump the 2 gigabyte memory? Can it calculate cement volume?
Yeah. So first we got 128 gigabyte memory. So we got a massive memory. So what we work on now is to have results in 6 hours. So from we have the tool available to have first interpretation of zones that are critical in 6 hours. So, but that's what we are aiming for now. We have run the 6 offshore pilots runs. We are loading out a new one next week, and we are developing on improving on the processing time. But it's data in heavy data here, and it takes time to process.
Okay.
And cement volume, yes, it can calculate cement volume.
There we go. So John had said, is this a push the bit or point the bit or bit RSS creating spirals? And then Johnny had said, yeah, exactly like rotating push pads. So that was kind of the thought there. And that one, then John also has a question. Have you calculated the effective diameter through the borehole from your data?
Yes, so we have looked at effective diameter both in zones that are stable and those that get more unstable, and it's very different in various zones. But when you calculate cement volume, you can easily get 200 or 300% more than what it should be, because it gets such a high effect when you have washout. But it varies a lot. So some zones can be very stable, and we see a lot of difference with lithology. some interbedded formations where you can have stable sands and then you get unstable shale and then you're back in the stable sand. And when you then try to get out, you can get pack off in the sand formation typically and wash out in the shale.
Wow, fascinating stuff. And this is just the first video. All right. Oh yeah, more. Okay.
Yeah. So square holes. I thought circular hole was the norm, but you see, especially in shale, that you often get squared holes. So here we have the time lapse. We have the 4D, which we call, and that's also a product we have is called 4D calipers. So we aim to get the time lapse of the formation, the change of formation, same as seismic has been doing for many years. And often during drilling, the hole is quite okay. And when you pull out, it has collapsed and sometimes collapsed severely, as you can see here. And then that, of course, has a high effect on torque and drag. You can see often get stuck in this zone, but it's also important to see how a zone can collapse, and is it then stabilizing, or is it continue just to grow with more and more cavings or washout? And then also understand when is it collapsing, what's causing it. Is it a mud issue? Is it mechanical? Is it pressure? What is causing it?
Okay, before we jump on this one, a couple of questions that came in.
Yep.
So Brian, John, and Brian, John DeWart, and Johnny Corva are like the leading up the conversations here. Can it see fractures like an ultrasonic LWD imaging tool?
We have seen some fractures. We have not focused on it during these runs, but we have seen some, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it depends what you are prioritizing. So we have prioritized caliper, but we have seen some big fractures can be seen on the caliper image, so a time of flight image.
Okay. Where is it? John was going to clarify. I was thinking of the effective diameter of a tool or casing to pass through the borehole.
Yeah, and that we have discussed this a lot, and it's not straightforward to answer on because you have so many spirals, and then you have local dogleg in addition. So depending how you have your stabilizations and how your local dogleg is and how your spiral is, then you can create scenarios where you can get a lock in the BHA, so you can lock yourself from passing through a certain zone. And the diameter might be okay, but the combination of spirals and doglegs, or especially local doglegs, can be very critical there. So we are now working with oil companies to find new ways of categorizing holes to make KPIs and new methods for predicting these scenarios or make effective diameter.
So would it be something kind of like where you just say, like, over this 5-foot range, here's the effective or the average effective diameter? Is it just looking at like a certain interval and just saying, okay, this is what our standard interval is going to be. This is what it is for 5. This is what it is for 10. And this is like what it is for instantaneous, almost like ROP. Yeah, exactly. So you can go in with, say that if you have a packed assembly with lots of stabilization points, then you can get through a certain zone. But if you have, so depending on your stabilization or liner, then you can calculate what you can go through. Okay. So I know we're keeping you from the presentation, but I love the fact that everybody's asking questions. So this is great stuff.
Absolutely.
Johnny asks, is the tool surveying also?
So we can calculate inclination, but it's not survey grade inclinometers or magnetometers.
Okay. Oh gosh, all the questions are really coming in now. Great stuff, guys. Keep them going. Yep. Do you have to rotate on the trip out to get the 4D?
Yeah, so you have to rotate to get the 4D, but to get these kind of images, you need to rotate. If you're just pulling, you get 4 lines, and we have 4 sensors 90 degrees apart, and that allows them to get something similar to a 4-armed caliper. So far, it's been focused on getting the details, and I think going forward, we can then see what can we read from a 4-armed caliper. I think if you're just pulling through this area, it would be hard to convince people about what you're seeing, because it's the images were so surprising. So we have had a high focus on quality, and then quantity comes later.
And then Johnny says, hence the 4D. Yeah. Can you determine stress direction then?
Yeah, it's there's so many discussions now with the customers we were running this pilot runs for about what's happening, and is it stress concentration, what is causing the change of borehole geometry that we see in the shale. So it's likely related to stress direction.
Sandy jumps in here. He says, Lars, also downhole dynamics, which can be extremely eye-opening in terms of what is actually happening downhole at the BHA in an extended well. 20 RPM at rotary equals 0 to 600 RPM at the BHA, happening in such fast bursts. It's not seen by the RSS shock sensors.
Absolutely.
Sandy,
and
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. That's you're spot on. So the tool that we have has a very accurate magnetometer to put the caliper measurements in the right angle, and accelerometers, and we use these for drilling dynamics as well. And we have seen that stick slip are not always caught by the RSS or the company doing directional drilling, and they are often not understanding the response from downhole. And we have seen this really fast stick slip responses can be just go under the radar. So and these events are often connected to hole geometry, that you can have a severe stick slip leading you into a spiral, or you can have a high local dogleg that leads you into a spiral. So this thing of correlating data, so to look at surface data versus downhole issues, look at downhole issues versus bit design or BHA stabilization or RSS command. I think that's so often the key to improve. We can say that this hole has a spiral, but then the next thing is what can you do to improve? And that's a really interesting part.
Okay, like I don't even know if we're going to finish the rest of the presentation with the amount of stuff that we've got flowing through everybody's brains here real quick, but I do want to bring this one up. We'll go through the next couple of slides and we'll go back to questioning, guys. I just want to be able to get through all of this because there's a lot of great stuff in here. Johnny says, and this kind of goes back to what John DeWart was saying, and Johnny, and say, I think we could import a mesh surface into some CAD software and running a model BHA through it. So essentially, having your three-dimensional wellbore and then 3D CAD up the BHA and then be able to run that through it to be able to see, I guess, about key seating.
Yeah, so we can deliver any format. We can deliver, we have done this ourselves. We have imported into CAD software just to try that out, and that works fine. The standard delivery is DLIs, but we can also make lots of other formats that can. So absolutely an interesting approach.
Can you send me an STL file and then I'll 3D print it?
Yeah, we have actually done it. We have 3D printed the wellbores, and then yeah. So that's
there
next time you can hand out wellbore.
Oh, there we go. All right, I'll let you go. We'll keep going a little bit in the presentation. I know you had another one that you were about to show, but lots of comments. Thanks, guys. Please keep commenting and questioning. I can save the comments and questions now on here, so you guys just keep bringing it through, and then we'll cover it all. Go ahead, Lars.
Yeah. So this is a more relaxing 40. It goes a little slower than the previous, but it's from a 16-inch section. And it's shale formations that are developing over time. So during drilling, we were 3-4 hours behind in formation exposure time. So we were on top of the BHA here, and the hole looked quite okay. We could still see some spirals that had been generated by bit and the lower part of the RSS, but when looked at the RELOG part, it had changed severely. So we see that especially the bottom part is getting almost flat, and you get something close to 90-degree corners at the bottom, which is highly surprising. And then can be used to understand what was happening, because this was an area that was known to give issues. It was always causing issues for line running. It could be hard to get out here. And then we can see when this collapse is happening, and also at which angles, which hole shape, and what's happening. So it's currently under analysis with the petrophysicist department, and I'm sure they will come to some interesting conclusions. Here at the lower part, there are some really severe washout and change in geometry. But this can absolutely get worse than this. This is still a hole that is possible to get out of. It's not but we have seen other cases where we are almost stuck or are stuck, and then need to dart to get out. And I'll show you some pictures of that later on. So I think technology, sensor is one thing, but the power of visualization should not be underestimated, because it's so hard to read image logs in 2D and so much easier to see them in 3D and look for stress concentration, so look for ovality. So, and we combined. Often people ask, what about drilling? What about gamma? What about other things? And we are starting to add in information. As you see here, we have the azimuth, we have the inclination, measure depth, and then we are adding in other information as well as requested to see, is there a correlation between weight on bit and the hole shape? Is there a correlation between torque, or is it anything to do with flow, or what are the causes here? So, any more questions? I'm ready. So I continue now, David. Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
mic was muted because I was coughing
Okay.
earlier. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Leroy says any preset conditions required or need to be kept in mind before using the tool. Sorry about that, guys. There's my technical mess up for the day.
Yeah. So the tool we have for big borehole is set up for oil-based mud. So we're working on a water-based, but it's oil-based at the moment, and that's also where we see the most issues with hole stability. So we chose to go for that first. It's not dependent on density on the mud, but we are setting up different amplitude depending on the hole size. So a 12.25 would be set up different than a 16-inch. But it's very little input the field engineer have to do of tuning.
And Brian said, we need this when we wear out the main reamer in deep water to determine where the cutters wore out.
Yeah. It's in some other hole sizes we have seen images of how where reamer is activated, and also at TD when it's So if you are below the reamer, you can log up and then get a transition between the hole that was drilled by the bit and the hole opened by the reamer. And then you can definitely say if it was functioning, if it was worn out or damaged.
Sandy asks, what we thought were narrow margin, low energy practices were actually the opposite. Slow pulling speed also resulted in jumping of the BHA due to string stretch.
Yeah, so we did a job for Sandy when he was in Neptune, and there was so much we figured out there that was different from the global best practice that the DD company had done there. So they were often going low energy, low RPM, and then you saw that resulted in peak stonehole, oscillation, awful stick slip, and also when they were just pulling slowly axially, you could have axial stick slip. And that could be very critical when you were close to bottom, because then the BHA could jump 1.5 meters and cause low pressure. And in unstable shale, that could be the small change in pressure that was critical to cause cavings. So measurements, I think that beats gut feeling in these cases.
So I'm guessing, so since Sandy was a part of running the tool prior, is that correct?
Yeah, so that was in a smaller borehole. It was an acoustic tool we were running there, but we were using visualization and data analytic that you see here. So same data analytic and visualization. So this is from the well that this is from 8.5-inch section, another tool. But it was from the 3D view here, you see cutting beds on low side, and then this is an area where there was a pack off, and it was very interesting to see how the hole was good while drilling, but it all changed when pulling out the hole. And then you had this is an example of key seating. So here the pipe had made a groove. You probably had a loose shale below, and then you got into firmer sand, and things packed off, and the pipe was making a groove here. And of course, trying to pull back in this was very hard. Managed to get out the hole then, but it took a while. So this shows some of the visualization, how we think it can be done in long term. That a picture means a lot more than words. Scribbly lines is very hard to read. So, but humans are so good at reading pictures, understanding pictures.
All right.
So that was the presentation I had, but I can always show some more images here.
Well, let me, we've got a couple more questions that have come in. Let me go back over here. Nick asks, where in the BHA are you typically running your tools?
So we are normally on top of the DD company's BHA, since we cannot, we have a straight bore, so there's no electrical connection from the DD company going through our tool. So we are then close to the top string stabilizer in the BHA. And we are discussing to get it real time with wired pipe. So we are working with wired pipe vendors to get it real time. It would be very cool. So hope to see that soon.
Excellent. And this is from Robert Estes, who's also, I guess, LinkedIn user 2.0. What % of rigs would run this 4D caliper service would also have the capability to rotate when tripping out stands.
Yeah, we often get this question about how can we rotate out, but I think if you have a big issue with you can get data without rotation, but if you have a big issue, it can be worth to spend some time to relog some areas. You don't need to relog the entire well, but if you can pick out some zones, that can give you very valuable insight in that you will save quickly for your coming wells. But it's a valid question, a good question.
So Brian says, so you could see when running casing what the borehole looks like ahead.
Yeah, so you can use this. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Almost
Sorry.
like a map when you're out driving. You have the map here, and then the road get closer to you as you are driving. So that's the thought here, and analogy to use of GPS.
And then Warner says, we're on it with the TDE power line.
Absolutely, Werner. We look forward to speed up the integration here. So I think it can be a very good combination.
So I've got a question because of last week's episode. And one of the things that we talked about was magnetic ranging and well intervention, where they're using magnetic ranging to do the well intervention. Have you guys, or is there any thoughts potentially to being able to see the hole opening and being able to pass through in a well intervention setting, to where then you would actually be able to kind of see essentially the what hole you created there within the existing hole? Is that something that's potentially on the radar as a use case?
Yeah, we discussed lots of application that is not directly related to drilling. Lots of completion of side tracks. You have multilateral wells, and to see what a junction look like in a multilateral well, or to just get the downhole Googles for how the well look like.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, if y'all have any more questions, now is the time to be able to ask them. We'll get them queued up for Lars. And if anybody else wants to just comment that they want to be able to test this out. So are you guys fully commercial with this now?
Yeah, I think first commercial job will be next week. So we're all prepared in the workshop today, and
congratulations.
Loading out next week. So it's big milestone for a small company.
So this is a question that came in earlier. Rakesh, hopefully you're still watching. Can you have sensors all around the hole to avoid the spiral effect?
If a question is if we can, we have 4 sensors today, so we can add more sensors to eliminate need for rotation to get a good image. But yeah, if that was an answer to the question.
Okay. And this one's from John DeWart. It says, fantastic technology application. Have you thought through a full value proposition of this technology combined with combined data, survey, logging, drilling that could cause operators to use as a routine tool? John DeWart. Excellent question.
Yeah. And the value proposition we work according to, and same that our joint industry project partners worked, was to get this used not as a special case tool, but to get volume out of it and get this as big data to look at not only one well, but let's look at lots of wells. So we absolutely aim to get the volume here. We are not there yet with just we need to produce more tool to get there. but then starting to combine data, correlate data, work with it as big data to see what are the correlation? Are the correlation between spile and mud? Is there a correlation between rig type or mud? Is it offshore? What does the heave compensation system do to spiles? All these things that you can start to find solutions and improvements on when you have big data.
And then Sandy says, Lars is prepared to go offshore in summer holidays if need be.
Yeah.
So nice of him to volunteer you for that.
Yeah. So we started with running one job was hard. Always setting up for first job is hard. And then we got 2 jobs. And of course, all these jobs comes over a vacation. So we got a request to if we could deliver a call-out job last summer during middle of the vacation, and of course said yes. So I volunteered to take that job, and it went fine. So.
Well, there's no such thing as vacation when you're an entrepreneur. Well,
no.
Well, Lars, thank you so much for being here on the show today. We really do appreciate it. Obviously, we've had a lot of great questions, a lot of interaction with the audience. Everybody here in the audience, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for next week and the weeks after. Oh, wait, we got a question here from Darren. So we'll ask that one real quick. Is this a standalone sensor or can it be used with any MWD?
Yeah, so it's a standalone sensor. We see that it's very limited what we can get over mud pulse telemetry, so we've not worked to get it incorporated with the mud pulse telemetry, but we are working to get it on wide pipe. So that's the plan.
Robert Esther asked some basic questions for the 4D caliper service, max temp, pressure, available collar sizes, tool, and length.
Yeah. So temperature is 125 C, pressure is 15,000 PSI. We have it in 9.5-inch collar size, and tool length is 2 meters.
It is do your conversion on your own. All right. Well, Brian, Robert, Johnny, Rakesh, Darren, Sandy, Warner, all the people that have been watching, really, really do appreciate you guys interacting and doing everything. Please just hit the little like button. It helps be able to further this out there. If you guys want to be able to get updates on the show, you can go to gibsonreports.com/VDOR-locksmith. I'll start doing the email list once again so that people will be getting notifications. And thank you so much to Robert Estes for emailing me last night and reminding me that I need to put the show time on the email. Did not do that yesterday. So we'll get that fixed. What else were the updates? Yeah, like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. Thank you guys all so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Lars, absolutely amazing presentation. This is really, really exciting technology. I'm always a big geek when it comes to this stuff. I think it's really cool. I can't wait to be able to see what we can do potentially with the ISC WSA and wellbore survey accuracy when we're able to really kind of see some of the stuff in there. So Darren says, great show today, Dave and Lars. So thank you guys for all being here. Thanks everybody for watching. Really do appreciate it. Stay tuned for next week's and upcoming weeks. We're getting the show back and going again. And I got to find the little button here. And as I always say, know your industry.